Day One stood in the center of the massive chamber with heavy metal chains around his wrists. The cold metal bit into his skin, but he kept his face calm. Above him, 7 alien judges sat on tall platforms, looking down at him like he was an insect. The chamber was built from dark stone that seemed to swallow all warmth. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species filled the seats behind him, all watching, all waiting to see him fall. He was human. That was his first crime in their eyes. Tribune Volmar, the lead judge, clicked his mandibles together. The insect-like alien had 4 arms and eyes that reflected light like black mirrors. Day One of Earth, Velmar's voice echoed through the chamber, translated into every language by devices in the walls. You stand accused of the murder of 3,000 souls. The destruction of the colony ship Eternal Dawn. How do you answer? Not guilty, Day One said clearly. His voice didn't shake. A wave of angry sounds rolled through the crowd. Clicks, hisses, growls, and words and languages he didn't understand. But he understood their meaning well enough. They wanted him dead. Ki-young, his lawyer, stood beside him. She was young for a human, barely 30 years old, and this was her first major case in the Galactic Concordat courts. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her datapad. My client is innocent, she said, but her voice was too quiet. Nobody seemed to hear her. Silence. Velmar's shout cut through the noise. The crowd obeyed immediately. The evidence will speak. A massive holographic screen appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the colony ship Eternal Dawn, a beautiful vessel that looked like a crystal needle floating in space. The ship had carried beings from 12 different species, all heading to start a new life on a fresh world. Then the image changed. Fire bloomed from inside the ship. The explosion tore through the hull in seconds. Pieces of the ship scattered into the darkness of space like dying stars. 3,000 lives ended in that moment. Day One had seen this footage 100 times since his arrest. Each time, it felt like a knife in his chest. Those people had families. They had dreams. And someone had killed them, but it wasn't him. Now, Velmar said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. Watch closely. The hologram changed again. It showed a corridor inside the ship, just hours before the explosion. A figure walked through the hallway, carrying a small device. The figure wore a maintenance suit, but when it turned toward the camera, the face was clear. It was Day One's face. The crowd erupted again. Shouts of murderer filled the air in a dozen languages. Someone threw something at Day One? It hit the energy barrier that surrounded him and fell to the floor with a wet splat. I was there, Day One said loudly, speaking over the noise. I went to the ship because I received a warning that something was wrong. I was trying to help. A convenient story, Velmar said. One that cannot be proven? The time stamp, Ki-young said suddenly, her voice stronger now. She held up her datapad. The video shows my client at 1447 station time, but the ship's chronometer records show he arrived at 1523. There's a 36-minute difference. Velmar waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. A minor technical error. Ships often have minor time sync issues. Not on colony ships, Ki-young insisted. Their chronometers are triple-checked before departure. This is evidence of tampering. Speculation, another judge said. This one was Caltharian, an aquatic species that sat in a tank of water. Her voice bubbled through a translator. The human was found at the scene. His biometric signature was on the detonation device. We have intercepted communications where he expressed hatred for non-human species. Those messages are fake. Day One shouted. I never said those things. Then who did? Velmar asked. Who would go to such lengths to frame you, human? Day One's jaw tightened. That was the question that haunted him. He had enemies, every diplomat did. But who would kill 3,000 innocent beings just to destroy him? My brother was on that ship, Day One said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Han Wu was working as an engineer on the Eternal Dawn. He was helping to maintain the reactor systems. If I wanted to destroy that ship, why would I do it while my own brother was aboard? For a moment, something flickered in Velmar's expression. Doubt, perhaps. but it vanished quickly. Perhaps you didn't know he was there. Or perhaps his presence was unfortunate but acceptable to achieve your greater goal. What goal? Day One demanded. What reason would I have? To start a war, Velmer said simply. Humanity has always been aggressive. You push at borders. You demand more territory, more resources, more power. The Concordat has been generous in accepting your species, despite your violent history. And this is how you repay us? With terrorism? That's not true, Ki-Young said. Humans have followed every rule, every regulation. Your presence here is a courtesy, Velmer interrupted. Not a right. The human species was admitted to the Concordat on probation. One significant violation and that membership can be revoked. Day One understood now. This wasn't really about him. It was about humanity itself. The older species in the Concordat feared humans. They saw how quickly humanity had advanced, how stubborn and creative and unpredictable they were. Some aliens wanted humans expelled from the Concordat, maybe even contained back on Earth, and this trial was their excuse. The evidence is clear, Velmer continued. The human Day One is guilty of mass murder and terrorism. I recommend immediate execution. To be carried out, the chamber shook. It started as a low rumble, like distant thunder. Then the floor began to vibrate. Day One stumbled, his chains rattling. Ki-Young grabbed his arm to steady herself. The judges looked around in confusion as the massive stone tiles beneath their platforms started to glow. Blue-white light seeped up from below, filling the cracks between stones. The light grew brighter, more intense, until everyone had to shield their eyes. Alarms blared throughout the building. Security forces rushed into the chamber, weapons drawn, but they didn't know what to shoot at. What is this? Velmer demanded. What's happening? Deep beneath the chamber, something ancient was waking up. Day One could feel it in his bones, a presence that had slept for longer than any species in the Concordat had existed. The light concentrated in the center of the floor, and the stone tiles began to sink downward, forming a descending platform. As the platform lowered, it revealed a vault that nobody knew existed. And inside that vault, standing upright as if it had been waiting, was an object that made every being in the chamber fall silent with awe and fear. It was a scepter. About as tall as a man, made from a material that seemed to shift between metal and crystal and light itself. Ancient symbols covered its surface, glowing with the same blue-white radiance that filled the chamber. The air around it hummed with power. The Founder's scepter, someone whispered in the crowd. It's real. Day One had heard stories about the progenitors, the ancient race that had seeded civilization across the galaxy millions of years ago. They had left behind artifacts and ruins, but most were dormant, dead things. The scepter was very much alive. Velmer stood frozen, all four of his arms trembling. Seal the chamber, he ordered. Nobody touches that artifact. But as security forces moved toward the vault, the scepter released a pulse of energy. It knocked the guards backward like they were toys. The weapon clattered from their hands. The scepter began to float, rising from its resting place. It drifted upward, passing through the light, moving with obvious purpose. Every eye in the chamber followed it. The scepter floated higher, rotating slowly, as if searching for something. Then it stopped. It hung in the air directly in front of Day One. Just beyond the reach of his chained hands, the symbols on the scepter blazed brighter. And then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating inside the mind of every being present. It spoke in all languages at once, a voice that was old beyond measure and carried the weight of cosmic authority. Wielder of Justice. The words hung in the air like a verdict from the universe itself. The scepter drifted closer to Day One, waiting. The chamber remained frozen in shocked silence. The scepter floated before Day One, its ancient light washing over his face. His chain suddenly felt lighter, almost meaningless compared to the weight of this moment. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Tribune Velmer was the first to break the silence. "Stop!" he screeched, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "Guards, remove that artifact immediately. The trial must continue." But none of the guards moved. They stared at the scepter with expressions of fear and wonder. One guard, a large reptilian being, took a cautious step forward. The moment his foot crossed an invisible line toward the artifact, energy crackled from the scepter's tip. A barrier of pure force materialized around Day One, and the guard was thrown backward with such power that he crashed into the far wall. "Nobody touches the human," the scepter's voice echoed again, though this time it spoke only in the common trade language. "The trial continues under new authority." Chaos erupted. Half the audience tried to flee the chamber, while the other half pushed forward to see better. The judges argued among themselves in multiple languages. Ki Young stood beside Day One, her mouth open in disbelief. "What is this thing?" she whispered. "I don't know," Day One admitted. "But I think it just saved my life." High Chancellor Wrath entered the chamber through a side door, moving with the graceful swimming motion of her species even though she walked on mechanical legs outside her water tank. The Keltharian leader was old, her scales a deep blue-green that spoke of wisdom and years of service. She raised her webbed hands for silence. "Peace!" her voice commanded through her translator. "Everyone will remain calm." Slowly the chaos subsided. Wrath approached the scepter carefully, keeping a respectful distance. Her large eyes studied the artifact with a mixture of reverence and concern. "I never thought I would see this day," she said softly. "When the Concordat was founded 2,000 years ago, we discovered this vault beneath the tribunal. The scepter was here, but it was dormant, dead. Our best scientists couldn't activate it. Our historians couldn't translate the symbols. We assumed it was simply a relic, nothing more. Then why is it active now?" Velma demanded. "And why does it protect this criminal?" "Perhaps," said a gentle voice from the judge's platform, "because he is not a criminal." All eyes turned to Tribune Kesrel. The luminary judge was tall and slender, with skin that glowed faintly with bioluminescent patterns. Her species was known for their empathic abilities, though most other species dismissed this as superstition. "You cannot be serious," Velmer hissed. The evidence may not be what it appears," Kesrel interrupted. "I have sensed deception in this chamber, but not from the human." Velmer's mandibles clacked together angrily, but before he could respond, a new voice called out from the entrance. "Make way! Archaeological expert coming through." A human woman pushed through the crowd, carrying several cases of equipment. She was in her 40s, with short black hair streaked with gray and sharp, intelligent eyes. 2 Concordat guards escorted her. "Dr. G1, Wrath acknowledged. "Thank you for coming so quickly." G1 set down her equipment near the vault's edge, careful not to get too close to the scepter. "When you said the Founder's scepter had activated, I thought you were joking." "This is impossible. This artifact predates every known civilization by millions of years. Yet here it is, very much active," Wrath said. "Can you tell us what it wants?" G1 pulled out a scanning device and pointed it at the scepter. The device immediately overloaded, sparking and dying in her hands. She dropped it with a curse and pulled out a different Tulan old-fashioned camera. "The symbols," she muttered, taking photographs from multiple angles. "I've seen similar patterns in other progenitor ruins, but never this clear, never this complete." She studied the images on her camera's screen, her fingers flying over a handheld computer as she cross-referenced databases. Her eyes grew wider as she worked. "This is incredible," she breathed. "The language is a precursor to at least 40 modern writing systems." "I can partially translate it." "The scepter is saying something about ... truth? Justice? And there's a phrase here that repeats, 'the worthy one.' The worthy one?" Wrath asked. "What does that mean?" G1 looked up at Day One, then at the scepter. "I think it means the artifact is choosing someone." The progenitors were obsessed with justice and moral authority. They built their entire civilization around the concept of leaders who could perceive truth and uphold fairness across all species. "Ridiculous," Velmer snapped. "An artifact cannot judge character. It's just a machine." "The progenitors weren't like us," G1 said. Their technology was beyond anything we understand. The scepter might be able to sense things we can't: honesty, intent, maybe even morality itself. As if responding to her words, the scepter pulsed with light. New symbols appeared on its surface, rotating around the shaft in a complex pattern. Guzruan scrambled to photograph them. "It's responding to us," she said excitedly. "It's listening." The scepter rotated to point at each of the 7 judges in turn. As it focused on Velmar, the light turned a dark red color. When it pointed at Kesrol, the light became a soft blue. It cycled through all the judges, assigning each a different color. "What does this mean?" Roth demanded. Jawan was frantically comparing the colors to her research. In progenitor culture, red typically indicated danger or dishonesty. Blue meant truth or harmony. If the scepter is evaluating the judges... She trailed off, looking at Velmar with new understanding. Velmar shifted uncomfortably on his platform. "This is absurd. You're reading meaning into random lights. I demand we seal this artifact away and continue the trial properly." "Why are you so eager to continue?" Kesrol asked quietly. "If the human is truly guilty, what harm is there in allowing this investigation to proceed?" "Because we cannot base justice on ancient superstition," Velmar shouted. "We have laws. We have procedures." The scepter suddenly blazed with brilliant white light. The voice returned, louder this time, more insistent. "The wielder approaches. Truth will be revealed. Those who fear truth will be known." And then the scepter moved. It floated directly to Day One, passing through the energy barrier it had created. The chains on his wrists began to glow with the same blue-white light. With a sound like breaking glass, the chains shattered and fell away. Day One stood free for the first time in weeks. The scepter hovered before him, waiting. "Don't touch it," Velmar warned. It could be a trap. But Day One wasn't listening to the Tribune anymore. He could feel something from the artifact, not a voice exactly, but a presence. It felt ancient and patient and immensely powerful. It wasn't hostile. If anything, it felt welcoming. Ki Young grabbed his arm. "Day One, we don't know what this thing does." "I know," he said. "But it's the only chance I have to prove my innocence." He reached out slowly. His fingers touched the scepter's surface. The world exploded into light. Power surged through Day One like electricity, but it didn't hurt. It felt like waking up after a long sleep, like seeing clearly for the first time in his life. Information flooded his mind, not words, but pure understanding. He could see the flow of truth and lies in the world around him, like colored threads weaving through reality. He looked at Ki Young and saw the blue thread of truth surrounding her. She genuinely believed in his innocence. He looked at Wrath and saw both blue and gray. The Chancellor wanted truth, but was also afraid of what it might reveal. Then he looked at Velmar. The Tribune was surrounded by threads of dark red and black. Lies upon lies, corruption running so deep it had become part of his nature. And behind Velmar, Day One could see ghostly images, memories perhaps, or records left by the scepter. He saw Velmar accepting a payment from shadowy figures. He saw secret meetings. He saw plans to frame humanity for crimes they didn't commit. "You," Day One said, his voice carrying a weight it had never possessed before. "You're part of it. Part of the conspiracy." Velmar's eyes widened in panic. "What nonsense are you?" "Silence," Day One commanded, and the word came out infused with the scepter's power. Velmar's mouth snapped shut involuntarily, the power flowing through Day One intensified. He raised the scepter, and it projected images into the air for everyone to see. The images showed Velmar in his chambers, meeting with unknown aliens. Money changing hands, documents being falsified. And worst of all, the plans for the Eternal Dawn's destruction, written months before the explosion happened. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Roth stared at the images in horror. The other judges recoiled from Velmar as if he carried a disease. "Impossible!" Velmar shrieked. "These are lies. Fabrications." But even as he spoke, everyone present could feel the truth radiating from the scepter. This ancient artifact, which had slept for millennia, didn't lie. It couldn't lie. That wasn't in its nature. Guards, Wrath said quietly, her voice heavy with disappointment and anger. Arrest Tribune Velmor. He will face trial for conspiracy and corruption as guards move to seize the former tribune. Day One felt the scepter's power settle into a steady flow. He understood now what it had chosen him for. Not just to prove his innocence, but to find the real truth. His brother was still missing. 3,000 beings were still dead. And the conspiracy went much deeper than one corrupt judge. The scepter had awakened because the galaxy needed justice. 3 days had passed since the scepter chose Day One. The entire Concordat was in chaos. News of the ancient artifact's awakening had spread across all 47 star systems. Some species celebrated, believing it was a sign of a new age. Others were terrified that a human now held such power. Day One stood in a secure laboratory deep within the Concordat Central Complex. The scepter never left his side now. He had tried to put it down once, and it had simply floated back to his hand. It seemed they were bound together, at least for now. G-Wan worked at a massive table covered with holographic displays, comparing images of progenitor texts from ruins across the galaxy. She hadn't slept much, surviving on stimulants and determination. I've figured out more of the symbols, she said without looking up. The scepter isn't just detecting truth and lies. It can see the past through residual energy signatures. Everything that happens leaves a trace in space-time, and the scepter can read those traces like we read books. Can it show me what really happened on the Eternal Dawn? Day One asked. Theoretically, yes, but you'll need to go there. The scepter works best at the location where events occurred. Qi Young entered the lab carrying datapads and looking exhausted. I've been going through the evidence files. With Velmor arrested, I got access to materials that were sealed before. The video of you planting the device was definitely faked. The timestamp proves it. But more than that, I found the original footage. She activated a hologram. It showed the same corridor, but this time the person walking through it wasn't Day One. The figure was shorter, moved differently. When they turned toward the camera, the face was obscured by a hood. Someone spliced your face onto this person's body, Qi Young explained. The technology is incredibly sophisticated. Military grade, at least. Who has access to that kind of technology? Day One asked. Only a few groups. Concordat Intelligence, Military Research Division, and private contractors who make weapons for the government. A soft chime announced another visitor. The door opened to reveal Hannah, a woman Day One hadn't seen in years. She wore the dark uniform of Concordat Special Operations, though no rank insignia showed. Her face was older than he remembered, marked by years of dangerous work. Hannah, Day One said, surprised. I thought you were off-world. I was, until I heard you were convicted of terrorism. She smiled grimly. Figured you might need help from someone who knows how to dig up buried secrets. They had worked together before Day One became a diplomat, back when they both served in human military intelligence. Hannah had chosen to stay in the field while he had moved to politics. I've been investigating on my own, Hannah continued. The conspiracy goes deeper than Velmor. He was taking orders from someone higher up? I tracked some of his communications to a group called the Primacy. The Primacy? Yuan looked up. That's just a myth. A conspiracy theory about the founding species controlling everything? Not a myth, Hannah said. Very real. Very powerful. They've been manipulating Concordat politics for centuries. Day One felt the scepter pulse in his hand. When he focused on Hannah's words, threads of truth surrounded them. She was telling the truth. The Primacy wants humanity removed from the Concordat, Hannah explained. We're too unpredictable, too aggressive in their view. They've been creating incidents to justify expelling us. The Eternal Dawn was supposed to be the final proof they needed. My brother, Day One said suddenly. Hen Wu was on that ship. Is he... Hannah's expression softened. I don't know. The official casualty list says everyone died. But I found something strange. 3 escape pods were launched just before the explosion. The records were deleted, but I recovered fragments. Someone survived. Hope surged through day one. Where did the pods go? That's what I can't figure out. The tracking data was completely wiped. But if your brother survived, the primacy might have captured him. He was an engineer. He might have seen something he wasn't supposed to. The scepter pulsed again, stronger this time. Day one felt it pulling him toward a specific direction, as if pointing at something far away. It wants us to go somewhere, he said. Go one studied the scepter's glowing symbols. The artifact is trying to guide you, probably to where the truth can be found. A new voice spoke from the doorway. Then we should move quickly. Tribune Kesrel entered, her luminescent skin dimming in what Day One had learned was a sign of concern in her species. High Chancellor Wrath has authorized a full investigation, but there's resistance from several council members. They're claiming the scepter is dangerous, that it's influencing you. Some are calling for it to be destroyed. Can they do that? Ki Young asked. They can try, Kesrel said. Which is why you need to find proof before they find a way to stop you. The primacy has members everywhere, even among the judges. Day One looked at each person in the room. His lawyer, the archaeologist, the spy, and the only judge who believed in him. An unlikely team, but they were all he had. Then we go to the eternal dawn, he decided. Or what's left of it. The wreckage of the colony ship floated in orbit around an empty planet that was supposed to be humanity's next colony. The debris field stretched for kilometers, a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. Day One's small ship approached carefully, scanning for the main hull section. There, Hannah said from the pilot's seat. The reactor compartment is mostly intact. They docked with the wreckage and put on their environment suits. The inside of the dead ship was cold and dark. Day One's helmet lights cut through the darkness. As they moved through corridors that had once been full of life and hope, the scepter glowed brighter as they went deeper into the ship. It was definitely guiding him somewhere specific. This is where Hyun Woo worked, Day One said, recognizing the engineering section from video calls with his brother. The reactor room was a mess of damaged equipment and frozen coolant. Be careful, the one warned. There might still be radiation? But the scepter pulsed, and Day One felt a shield of energy surround him. The artifact was protecting him. He approached the main reactor console and placed his hand on it. The scepter blazed with light. Suddenly, Day One could see the past. Like watching a recording, but more real, more immediate. He saw his brother working frantically at this console days before the explosion. Han Wu looked worried, his fingers flying over the controls as he ran diagnostics. Someone sabotaged the reactor, Past Hyun Wu muttered. This isn't a malfunction. This was deliberate. Past Hyun Wu pulled out a data device and started copying files. Then he sent a message. Day One couldn't hear the words, but he saw his brother's lips move. Day One, if you get this, don't trust anyone. The reactor was tampered with months ago. I found the modification buried in the maintenance records. Someone wants this ship to explode. The vision shifted. Day One saw himself arriving at the ship, responding to a warning message. He watched his past self search the corridors, trying to find his brother. Then armed figures appeared, not Concordat security, but mercenaries in unmarked armor. They chased his past self through the ship. He saw himself trapped in a compartment. Saw the mercenaries plant the detonation device he had been accused of placing. Saw them record him without his knowledge. Then edit the footage later. And then he saw the explosion from outside. But in the moment before the ship died, he saw 3 escape pods launching. One of them carried his brother. The vision ended. Day One staggered back, overwhelmed by what he had witnessed. Are you okay? Ki Young asked through the communication link. I saw it all, Day One said. The scepter showed me the truth. Hyun Woo discovered the sabotage. They tried to kill both of us, but he escaped. The pods. I'm tracking the pod trajectories now, Hana interrupted. If I reverse calculate from their launch point. Got it. They would have landed on Vylori's Prime, right in the capital city. He's been on the planet this whole time? Day One asked in disbelief. Probably in hiding, Hannah said. If the primacy knows he has evidence, they'll be hunting him. They returned to the ship quickly. As they flew back toward Valori's Prime, Day One used the scepter to review more of what he had seen. The artifact could show him so much, but it couldn't tell him where his brother was now. Then his communication console beeped. An incoming message, heavily encrypted. Ki Young worked to decrypt it while they flew. It's from Hyun Woo, she said in amazement. He's alive. He's been hiding in the industrial sector. He says he has proof about the primacy. Names, dates, evidence of dozens of incidents they caused over the last century. It could be a trap, Hannah warned. Day One held up the scepter. It pulsed with blue light the color of truth. No, it's really him. There's more to the message, Ki Young said. He says the primacy is planning something big. They're going to stage a coup and take direct control of the Concordat. They have members in the military, the government, everywhere. And it's happening soon. In less than 2 days. Kesrel's voice came through the communication system. If they succeed, they'll declare martial law. They'll expel humanity and any other species they consider a threat. Millions could die. Day One looked at the scepter in his hand. This ancient artifact had chosen him for a reason. Not just to clear his name, but to stop a conspiracy that threatened the entire galaxy. Then we stop them, he said. We find my brother. We get his evidence. The industrial sector of Valori's Prime was a maze of factories and warehouses that ran day and night. Perfect for hiding. Day One moved through the shadows with Hannah leading the way, while Ki, Young, and Ji-Won stayed back at their safe house to analyze the data. The scepter's glow was dimmed, wrapped in cloth to avoid drawing attention, but Day One could still feel its power thrumming beneath the fabric. The coordinates point to that warehouse, Hannah whispered, indicating a large building that processed recycled metals. If it's a trap, we'll know soon enough. They entered through a side door. Inside, the massive space was filled with sorted piles of scrap metal and automated machinery. Everything was quiet except for the hum of machinery. Hyun-Woo. Day One called out softly. A figure emerged from behind a sorting machine. Day One's heart leaped. It was his brother, thinner than before, with a beard and tired eyes, but alive. They rushed to each other and embraced. I thought you were dead, Day One said, his voice thick with emotion. Almost was, Hyun-Woo replied. The escape pod crashed hard. Took me weeks to recover. By the time I could move around, I saw news that you'd been arrested. I knew then that the primacy was framing you to cover their tracks. You found evidence? Han-Woo pulled out a data storage device. Everything is here. The reactor sabotage wasn't just about the Eternal Dawn, it was a test. The primacy has been sabotaging colony ships, mining operations, and diplomatic missions for decades, always making it look like accidents or attacks by the newer species. Hannah took the device and plugged it into her portable scanner. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the files. This is incredible. Financial records showing payments to mercenaries. Communication logs planning incidents. Even video confessions from some of their lower-level operatives. There's more, Hyun-Woo said. I've been hiding here for months, but I wasn't just hiding. I met someone, a journalist named So-Min. She's been investigating Concordat corruption for years. She has sources inside the government. As if summoned by her name, a woman appeared from another part of the warehouse. So-Min was a Vrishan like Velmar, but her bearing was completely different. Where Velmar had been arrogant, she was cautious and sharp-eyed. You're the human with the artifact, she said, studying Day One. The one they're all afraid of. Are you with the primacy? Day One asked, unwrapping the scepter slightly. It would tell him if she lied. No, So-Min said firmly. The scepter glowed blue. Truth. I've dedicated my life to exposing them. But they're powerful. Every time I publish something, it gets buried. Sources disappear. Other journalists who ask too many questions have accidents. How many members does the primacy have? Hannah asked. At least 50 in key positions, So-Min replied. But they control hundreds more through blackmail and bribes? They have people in every major government and military command. They've been running the Concordat from the shadows since it was founded. We need to go public with this, Day One said. Broadcast everything. Force them into the light. They'll shut down any broadcast, Hyun-woo warned. They control the communication networks. Hannah smiled grimly. Not all of them. Commander Beora is in orbit with the Human Defense Fleet. I served with her. She's clean, and her ship has independent broadcasting capability. Will she help? Daewon asked. If we can prove what we're saying is true, she help. Beora hates corruption. They were preparing to leave when alarms suddenly blared throughout the warehouse. Red lights flashed. Automated doors began sealing. They found us, Hannah said, pulling out her weapon. Move! They ran toward the exit, but it closed before they could reach it. Through the windows, Day One could see armed figures surrounding the building. Not Concordat security uniforms, these were mercenaries in black armor. The roof! Hyun-woo shouted, pointing to a maintenance ladder. They climbed quickly, the scepter making Day One stronger and faster than he should have been. They emerged onto the roof just as the mercenaries breached the warehouse below. The night sky of Valori's Prime spread above them, filled with the lights of ships coming and going. There, So-min pointed. A transport ship was approaching their position. That's not military. That's a primacy vessel. The ship's weapons charged with an ominous hum. They were going to destroy the entire warehouse to eliminate the evidence. Day One unwrapped the scepter fully. Its light blazed against the darkness. He didn't know if what he was about to try would work, but the artifact's power filled him with confidence. Protect them, he commanded the scepter. Energy burst from the artifact, creating a dome of shimmering force around the rooftop. Just in time, the primacy ship fired. The energy blast struck the shield and dispersed harmlessly inside the ship. Day One could see faces through the windows, and leading them was someone he recognized from the visions the scepter had shown him. Archon Velkor, So-min breathed. Velmer uncle, the leader of the primacy. The ship circled, preparing for another attack. But before it could fire, 3 military vessels appeared, moving fast. They bore the markings of the Human Defense Fleet. Beora had arrived. Unidentified vessel, stand down immediately, Beora's voice broadcast across all frequencies. You are engaging civilians under Concordat protection. The primacy ship hesitated. Then, to everyone's shock, it opened fire on Beora's ships instead. All units defensive positions? Beora commanded. Return fire only on my mark. Record everything. The night sky erupted into a battle. Energy weapons crisscrossed overhead as Beora's 3 ships engaged the primacy vessel. More ships were appearing now, Concordat security responding to the conflict. But some of those ships began firing on Beora's fleet instead of the primacy vessel. They have people in the security fleet too, Hannah said grimly. Day One watched in horror as the battle escalated. Ships were being damaged. People were dying. All because the primacy wanted to maintain their power. The scepter pulsed urgently in his hand. He felt it trying to show him something. When he focused, he could see threads of energy connecting the various ships. Some threads were blue loyal Concordat forces. Others were red primacy agents. And all the red threads led back to one location, the Concordat Central Complex. They're coordinating from the government building, Day One said. The primacy is staging their coup right now, using this battle as cover. We need to get to that building, Hyun-woo said. Expose them before they can consolidate power. How? Ki-young's voice came through their communicators. She and Ji-won were watching from their safe house. The building will be locked down. Day One looked at the scepter. It had shown him the past. It had protected him. What else could it do? Can you get us inside? He asked the artifact. The scepter blazed with light. Suddenly, a portal of energy opened in the air before them, a doorway that showed the interior of the Concordat Central Complex. Progenitor teleportation technology, Ji-won's voice came through. Filled with awe, the scepter can create wormholes. They didn't have time to marvel. Day One stepped through first, and the others followed. They emerged in a hallway deep inside the complex. Alarms were already blaring. "They know we're here," Hannah said. "Good," Day One replied. "I want them to know." They moved through the hallways quickly. The scepter guided Day One, showing him where to go. They reached the main command center, where High Chancellor Wrath and other government officials were coordinating the response to the battle. Overhead, but as they entered, Day One saw Archon Velcor standing at the center console. The elderly alien was addressing the room with authority. "The human fleet has gone rogue," Velcor was saying. "This is exactly what we've warned about. Humanity is too dangerous to remain in the Concordat. I am invoking Emergency Protocol 7. All human assets are to be seized. All human colonies quarantined." "That's enough," Day One said loudly. Every head turned toward him. Velcor's expression shifted from surprise to rage. "Guards! Arrest that human immediately." But the guards didn't move. They were staring at the scepter in Day One's hand, which blazed with righteous light. "This artifact has chosen me to reveal truth," Day One said. "And the truth is that Archon Velcor leads the Primacy Conspiracy. That has been manipulating the Concordat for centuries. Lies!" Velcor shouted. "He's using that artifact to control you. To deceive you." The scepter pulsed. Suddenly, holographic images filled the room, projected from the artifact itself. They showed Velcor's secret meetings. They showed the sabotage of the Eternal Dawn. They showed decades of conspiracy, manipulation, and murder. "These are fabrications," Velcor insisted, but his voice was weaker now. People were backing away from him. Then Hyun Woo stepped forward, holding up his data device. "Here's the evidence. All of it. Names, dates, financial records, everything." Somin activated her own device, broadcasting to her journalist network. "I'm sending this to every independent news outlet in the Concordat. Within minutes, everyone will know the truth." High Chancellor Wrath stared at Velcor with an expression of betrayal and fury. "You were one of the founders. One of the original architects of the Concordat. How could you? Because you weak fools were destroying everything." Velcor snarled, his composure finally breaking. "Letting primitive species like humanity join us? Giving them rights? Power? They should serve us, not stand beside us." The scepter blazed brighter. Its voice resonated through every mind in the room. Truth revealed. The floor trembled beneath their feet. A deep rumbling sound came from far below the Concordat Central Complex, growing louder with each passing second. Day One felt the scepter react violently, its light shifting from calm blue to urgent red. "What did you do?" Wrath demanded of Velcor. The Archon laughed, a sound devoid of sanity. "The progenitors didn't just leave relics behind. They left weapons. Under every major Concordat building, they buried planetary destroyers. Safeguards against their civilization being misused after they were gone." Day One's voice crackled through Day One's communicator, panicked. "I'm reading massive energy buildups beneath the complex. It matches progenitor weapon signatures from excavation sites. If that activates fully, it will destroy the entire planet." "Deactivate it," Wrath shouted at Velcor. "I can't," Velcor said calmly. "Only the Wielder of Justice can control progenitor weapons. And since the artifact chose him," he pointed at Day One, "he'll have to make a choice." The scepter pulled at Day One, trying to drag him toward the source of the disturbance. He understood what it wanted. The weapon was somewhere deep below, and only he could stop it. "Go," Hannah shouted. "We'll handle things here." Day One ran. The scepter created portals as he moved, letting him teleport through sealed doors and down endless levels. The building shook harder with each passing moment. He could hear explosions in the distance as parts of the city began to collapse from the seismic activity. Finally, he emerged in a vast chamber carved from solid rock. It was ancient beyond measure, the walls covered in glowing progenitor symbols. In the center of the chamber stood a massive device that looked like a twisted sculpture of metal and crystal, and something that might have been alive once. The weapon energy crackled around it, building toward a critical threshold. Day One approached cautiously. The scepter in his hand vibrated with recognition. The wielder approaches, the weapon's voice echoed, similar to the scepter's but darker, older. State your judgment. Destroy the corrupt world or save it and risk future corruption? Day One stared at the device. He could feel its power. It was offering him a choice. Use it to destroy Valori's Prime and every primacy member on it, eliminating the threat forever. Or deactivate it, save billions of innocent lives, but risk the primacy regrouping and trying again. Show me, Day One said to the scepter. Show me both futures. The scepter obliged. Visions flooded his mind. In one future, he let the weapon fire. Valori's Prime died in an instant. Billions of beings vaporized, guilty and innocent alike. The primacy was destroyed, but so were countless innocents. Humanity was blamed for the catastrophe. War erupted across the Concordat. Species turned against each other in fear and rage. Within a generation, the Concordat collapsed entirely, and darkness ruled the galaxy. In the other future, he stopped the weapon. The primacy members were arrested and tried. Some escaped. Some returned to try again in different ways. It was messy, difficult, and imperfect. But the Concordat survived. Trust was slowly rebuilt. New systems were created to prevent corruption. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was just enough. And over time, working together, all the species made something better. The visions ended. Day One understood now. The test wasn't about destroying evil. It was about choosing mercy even when vengeance was easier. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Hyanwu, Hannah, and G1 had followed him down. So had Casserole and High Chancellor Wrath. Even Velcor was there, held between guards. What are you waiting for? Velcor taunted. Use the weapon. Show them what humans really are, vengeful, violent primitives. Day One turned to face them all. The progenitors fell because they chose power over wisdom. They built weapons instead of trust. And their civilization destroyed itself. He placed his hand on the weapon. The scepter's power flowed through him and into the ancient device. But instead of firing it, he was dismantling it from within. The energy that had been building toward destruction was being redirected, dispersed harmlessly into the planet's core where it would dissipate over centuries. Justice, Day One said quietly, isn't about punishment. It's about protection. About choosing the harder path because it's the right one. The weapon began to glow, but not with destructive energy. Its light was soft, peaceful. The progenitor device was transforming, its aggressive programming being rewritten by the scepter's influence. The test is complete, the weapon's voice said, and now it sounded almost grateful. The wielder has chosen wisely. Mercy over vengeance, protection over punishment. This is justice. The shaking stopped. The energy readings plummeted to safe levels. The ancient weapon powered down completely, becoming inert once more. Velcor stared in disbelief. No, you should have used it. You had the power. Power isn't about what you can destroy, Day One said. It's about what you choose to protect. The scepter blazed one final time. Its light swept across the entire Concordat, reaching every planet, every ship, every being. And in that moment, everyone saw the same thing, the truth about the primacy. Revealed in undeniable clarity, every primacy member was exposed simultaneously. Their disguises failed. Their lies became transparent. In government buildings across 47 star systems, conspirators were revealed. Some tried to run. Some tried to fight. But with their secrecy gone, they had no power left. High Chancellor Wrath addressed the galaxy through emergency broadcasts. Today, we learned that we have been manipulated for centuries. But we also learned something else. Justice still exists. Truth can still prevail. And it doesn't matter which species delivers it, as long as someone is willing to stand for what's right. The aftermath took weeks to sort through. Thousands of primacy members and collaborators were arrested. Trials began, fair ones this time. Overseen by judges from multiple species with the scepter's power ensuring honesty, Velcor faced trial for his crimes. He was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, though some argued he deserved execution. Day 1 testified that justice meant following the law, even for the worst criminals. Especially for the worst criminals, the Concordat reformed itself. New rules were established to prevent any group from accumulating too much secret power. A new position was created, Guardian of Justice. It wasn't a position of authority, but of oversight. Someone who could investigate anywhere, question anyone, and ensure truth was being upheld. They offered it to Day-1. He stood in the same tribunal chamber where he had once been condemned, but everything was different now. The chamber had been renovated, made less intimidating, more welcoming. Representatives from every species sat in a circle rather than on high platforms. "Will you accept?" Roth asked. Day 1 looked at the scepter in his hand. It had become a part of him over these weeks. He understood it now, and it understood him. "On one condition," he said. "The scepter returns to its vault. Justice shouldn't depend on an ancient weapon. It should depend on people choosing to do what's right." "But the scepter chose you," Kesrel protested. "It may not work for anyone else." "Then it doesn't need to work," Day 1 said firmly. "We can't rely on magic artifacts to save us. We need to save ourselves." He walked to the vault in the center of the chamber. The opening had remained since the scepter had first emerged. He placed the artifact back on its pedestal. "Thank you," he said to it, "for giving me a chance to prove my innocence, for showing me truth. But your job is done." The scepter pulsed once, a feeling of approval and farewell. Then its light dimmed. It became dormant once more, just another ancient relic. But everyone who had witnessed its power would remember what it represented. Day 1 turned back to the assembled representatives. "I'll accept the position of guardian, but not because I have a magic weapon. I'll do it because someone needs to. And if I fail, someone else should take my place. This isn't about one person or one species. It's about all of us." The vote was unanimous. Months passed. The Concordat slowly rebuilt trust. Anti-human sentiment didn't disappear overnight, but it diminished. When people saw humans working alongside other species to root out corruption, when they saw humans helping rebuild what the primacy had damaged, minds began to change. Haiyan Wu returned to engineering, helping design safer colony ships with new safeguards against sabotage. Qi Yang became a supreme justice, reforming the legal system to be fairer to all species. Ji1 continued her archaeological work, studying progenitor ruins to understand their wisdom and their mistakes. Hana remained in intelligence, hunting down the last remnants of the primacy network. Somin's journalism network grew into a powerful independent media organization that governments couldn't control. Bora led the creation of a multi-species peacekeeping force to respond to crises without political interference. Day 1 worked tirelessly as guardian of justice. He traveled to every corner of the Concordat, investigating complaints, ensuring fair treatment, and proving by example that the position was about service, not power. One day, 5 years after his trial, an alarm went off in a small colony. A dispute between two species had escalated toward violence. Local authorities couldn't handle it. They called for the guardian, but when Day 1 arrived, he found the situation already resolved. A young colonist, a member of a species that had only joined the Concordat recently, had stepped between the two groups. She had spoken with such passion about justice and fairness that both sides,